Hello, my name is Ryan Fischels with Reset Consulting, and in this video we're going to go through landed costs in NetSuite. What are landed costs? Landed costs are additional costs incurred to bring inventory to your location. These can include costs like shipping, duties, insurance, handling, and custom fees, or anything specific to your industry or business. Why do you want to use landed costs in NetSuite? We want to accurately reflect inventory value, improve profitability analysis, or ensure more accurate cost of goods sold records at the item level. There's three methods to apply landed costs. We'll go through each of those in this video. The first is manual entry, using landed cost templates, or applying vendor bills directly to your item records. And then finally, what types of transactions can we apply landed cost to? We can use item receipts, we can use vendor bills, checks, or credit card charges. There are a number of steps that your administrator needs to follow to enable landed costs in your instance of NetSuite. First of all, we need to enable the landed cost feature. To do so, we'll navigate to Setup, Company, Enable Features, and under Items and Inventory, we'll enable landed costs. Second, we need to configure our item records which will accept our landed costs. So under any item records that you carry, we can now scroll down and click Track Landed Costs. This can be done manually or via a CSV import. Next, we need to set up our cost categories. To do so, navigate to Setup, Accounting, and Accounting Lists. The accounting list type that we need to set up is a cost category. We already have a few set up in our instance, so we'll take a look at those. And let's take a look at landed costs duties. Within here, we see that we have a standard name field. We have an expense account, and we also have a cost type set to landed. The cost type setting to landed is key as that enables the expense account field to show. We can set up any GL account that we have available to take these landed cost expenses as we incur them. Next, we need to install the supply chain management bundle. Under customization and Suite Bundler, we can go to search and install bundles and go to list. First of all, check if the supply chain management bundle is installed. Ours currently is. If it's not, we can go to new and search for bundle 47193. Search, follow the link, and install. Note that this is an add-on, and if it's not currently provisioned to your NetSuite license, you'll want to reach out to your account manager for that option. Next, we need to enable landed cost templates. So we'll navigate to Transactions, Management, and Supply Chain Management. Following the Preferences link, you'll notice Estimated Landed Cost is an option. Go ahead and make sure that that is also selected for your setup. There's two optional settings we can also grab. If we go back to Setting, Accounting, and Accounting Preferences, under Items and Transactions and Inventory, we'll see Include Landed Cost in Last Purchase Price. As we go through the demo, you'll see that the average cost is impacted by default by the landed cost inputs, but last purchase price will not be. If you'd like last purchase price to be impacted, grab this selection. The second optional setting under Order Management and Receiving is landed cost allocation per line. We'll review this on the template example, but this sets a default checkbox on our item receipt records. Moving on, let's go into the specific examples of each option to apply landed cost. The first being the manual landed cost allocation option. Pros and cons of the manual landed cost method. First pro is that you have full control over specific landed cost amounts. We can plug in any value we want for any of the cost categories that we want. It's also very useful for ad hoc or variable cost circumstances. The cons are it's a manual effort required for each and every transaction, and you also have a higher risk of user error or inconsistency because you can enter any value that you'd like. So from here, we have a purchase order. We have acquired two items, one with a quantity of 50, one with a quantity of 100, at the following rates and total amounts. We then go to receive these items. On the item receipt record, looks like every other item receipt that we've ever taken in, grabbing the two items and getting the full quantities in hand. On the landed cost subtab, you'll notice that we have two cost categories as well a cost allocation method set to quantity. If I edit this item receipt, we receive a few additional options. So in the cost allocation method, we can allocate by weight, quantity, or value across our items that we're receiving. You'll notice that we see landed cost freight and landed cost duties. These are the cost categories that we set up in the initial setup, and these will again carry through the entirety of the process. These fields are open. I can type any value I want, and again, the source is set to manual. When we save this receipt and then check the GL impact, we'll see the GL impact is fairly standard for the first three lines. We're debiting inventory and crediting inventory received, not billed. However, we continue down, we'll now see the impacts to our expense accounts that we had set up in our cost categories for landed cost freight and landed cost duties. We're crediting the expense account in anticipation that a final bill will come with a debit to offset that credit. And the final impact is that the cost is then pushed into the value of the inventory. So looking at this particular example, on our freight line for assembly 200 SN, and also for our duty line for the same, we have about $6,066 of landed costs on top of our item receipt worth $13,750. The proof that this has been pushed down is if we refer to the item record for the same assembly, and we go down to our location records, there is the sum of all three inputs, the two lines of landed costs plus the value of the item receipt, coming in around $19,800, pushing up that average cost. I mentioned the option to push the landed cost values into the last purchase price. You'll notice that I did not select that. So our last purchase price does currently reflect the purchase price of the item. If we had grabbed that first option from the setup, that last purchase price would match our average cost in this example, being this is the only item receipt that we've had. The next option we have is using a landed cost template. So for the landed cost template method, pros and cons. The first pro is it automates consistent allocation logic. You are putting the responsibility for landed cost calculation in a centralized form. You have one person, an administrator, possibly working with a controller, who controls what the amounts are that are going into these templates. That also reduces manual data entry and errors. On the con side, it does require initial setup and ongoing maintenance, and it may not capture the true landed costs if the estimates are off or different than what you're actually paying for, in this case, freight or tariffs. There's a little bit of setup for using a landed cost template, and it starts under the lists, accounting, and landed cost templates path. Currently, we have 4 landed cost templates set up. I can go in and edit this second for freight and import duty. Again, we have a standard name and description field. Grab the correct currency. And then our cost categories come back. So we're going to use freight and duties in this example. And our cost allocation method, I have set to percent of value. You can also use quantity, weight, a flat amount, or percent of value, which we're using here. For freight, I'm saying 5% of the value needs to be applied. And for duties, we're using 25%. We can save this record and now use it on our item receipts. Moving forward, there's one additional setup that we need to use on our same assembly item. And if we go to our landed cost template subtab, we'll see that we can select our landed cost template. We do need to select this for any of the templates that we want to use on our specific item records. I've also grabbed this as the preferred landed cost template if that's helpful in a case where you have multiple templates. Now we can go to our purchase order. Again, same process for our purchase order with one exception. I've grabbed the landed cost template of freight and import duty, and this will carry through to the item receipt when we take in the items. On the item receipt record, now we'll notice that the landed cost per line checkbox is checked because we're using a line level application for our landed cost template and applying freight and import duty template to each line. The second optional setting that we pointed out at the beginning, landed cost per line, this is the checkbox that's impacted. Keep that in mind as you're administering this, and if it's helpful, feel free to use that setting. So the impact of using a landed cost template is, again, a 5% impact to freight and a 25% impact to tariffs. Grabbing the landed cost link, we can see what that pushdown is. So $3,437 to duties and $687.50 to freight. Just like we saw in manual, we have a similar GL impact and pushdown. Lastly, let's go through the vendor bill application option. Pros here, you're using actual cost to determine the landed cost amounts. You won't have variances because what you have been billed for is what you're applying to your item records. It also reduces manual data entry errors because you have a specific amount that you're applying. On the con side, timing of the vendor bill arrival relative to your period close may become a problem. If you're receiving an item on, say, the 25th of the month, but you haven't received the bill for freight or for your duties until the 4th, 5th, or 6th of the following month, you may have timing issues with closing out your period and not being able to go back and apply that vendor bill to an item receipt from a prior closed period. And then you must also associate each vendor bill to the correct item receipt, which can be a timely process. Setup for using a vendor bill is we need to create an item record that we can use on a vendor bill. I'm using an other charge for purchase item type. And as a best case, I like to use a prefix of LC or landed cost. When you're going through and building out your vendor bill, this just helps you to find those specific items that you want to use and apply landed costs via and through. So landed cost duty is the title of this item record. Every other setup is exactly the same as other item records. On the accounting tab, pay attention to your expense account and make sure that this is where you want the credits and then matching debits to come in and go out of your GL. Now we can take this record and we can apply it to a vendor bill. So we have a vendor bill here, and this is for duties. So we're going to be paying U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The reference number, which is very important, I'll show you why in a second, is demo duty charge. Keep this reference number in some sort of cadence or sequential so that you can apply via this reference number this bill to your item receipt, which we'll see here in a second. This is very important. Otherwise, we grab our landed cost duty record that we just created. We plug in the amount of the bill. And in the landed cost category, we're going to grab that landed cost duties cost again. From here, we can save and receive our items as we've been doing. So we have a new item receipt here, our same two items. This time on our landed cost subtab, we'll see that our cost allocation method is still set to quantity. However, for our landed cost freight and landed cost duties cost categories, these are now grayed out and our source is other transaction. Notice that on the transaction line, we have demo duty charge. This is a reference to our vendor bill that we just created. So there's our reference number, type is bill, date, our vendor, and then the amount. So we can grab this. And I also have a demo freight charge vendor bill that I also want to apply. It would have been the exact same process. NetSuite will take these amounts and it will allocate it to our two items, again, based on quantity. Just like in manual, we can select weight or value in addition to the option for quantity. Saving this item receipt, and we have the following GL impact. I hope this has been helpful. These are the three methods you can use, as well as the setup to initiate tracking landed costs within your NetSuite instance. If you have any questions or want a specific demo within your environment, please reach out to Reset Consulting, and we'd be happy to help you. Thanks, and have a great day.